Hi, I'm Larry Smith, evening news anchor for LEX 18, and I am delighted and honored to be with you again this year as your guest MC. Allow me to welcome you to the 28th annual Unity program, sponsored by the Education Foundation of the Alpha Beta Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Proceeds from this program are used to provide scholarships and support other educational endeavors in Central Kentucky. The foundation is pleased that you are taking time today to assist us in honoring the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The theme for this year's program is Unity, a necessity for life's challenges. Needless to say, the coronavirus is still with us. This new Omicron strain of COVID has presented us with new challenges. But thanks to technology, we once again will be able to present our Unity program virtually. And as in years past, we will have an outstanding program with great speakers, timely recognitions to individuals and organizations for their outstanding community service. Additionally, we'll have some really good music to keep us in a joyful mood. The purpose of this Unity program is to commemorate the life and legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his vision for peace and unity. Quite naturally, any dream or vision is challenging to implement, but Dr. King's dream of peace and unity has brought us special challenges. Our nation has been ravaged by wildfires in the West and floods and tornadoes in the Midwest to the East Coast. Even our own state, tremendously impacted with massive tornadoes just weeks ago. These events are horrific, but they did act to bring out the best in humanity, both nationally and locally, with people stepping up to help others in need. The important thing to note here is through the challenging times, hope still reigns. With that said, let's get started with our program with the traditional Call for the Occasion and Unity Lighting Ceremony. Mr. Christian Adair, immediate past president of the local chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha, along with some fraternity members, will do the honors.
The word unity represents friendship, and there is strength in standing together with purpose in harmony and agreement. Dr. King's fight for equality was through unity. During a speech in 1965, Dr. King stated, "We must all learn to live together as brothers." We are here today with a purpose. We come together to honor the memory of a transformational hero and to remind ourselves of the challenges and the work that lies ahead of us. Today is a great day to unite our country and uplift our communities. Therefore, let us commit our energies to make Lexington a better place to live, a better place to work, and a better place for us to raise our children. Let's make Lexington a living testament and example to Dr. King's dream of unity.
U represents universal. Dr. King's message knew no boundaries and it applied to all members of our human race. Light up the U in unity.
N represents noble. Dr. King was a noble and worthy servant leader. Although imperfect, his service has left us eternally indebted to him. Light up the N in unity.
I represents intellect. Our Dr. King was a man of great intellect. Because of his superior knowledge, he had the courage and insight to dream visions of equal justice for all. Light up the I in unity.
T represents theologian. Dr. King stated, "My faith in man is at the bottom. My faith is in God." As a theologian, his belief in an ever-abiding faith in mankind would preserve and allow good to overcome bad. Light up the T in unity.
Y represents you. Dr. King would say that in each of you reside that same divine quality of love that is able to unearth, harness, and benefit all humankind. May his dream live on. Light up the Y in unity.
Music has always been a method of bringing hope to African Americans and others. The song Lift Every Voice and Sing was written by James Weldon Johnson and penned to music by his brother, John Rosamond Johnson. Now, this song was written to celebrate the birthday of Abraham Lincoln, but quickly became a call to action that honors African Americans' long and painful struggle for freedom. Backed by popular demand, and here to perform this musical selection is the Kentucky State University Concert Choir from Frankfort. Following the song, we will be led in the litany of commemoration by Ms. Tanel Edlin. She's the Ms. Black and Gold from the Epsilon Chi chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated at the University of Kentucky.
In the grand order of the universe, our Lord God has wisely chosen men and women to serve him in each era. Such a servant of our Lord God was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose birth we now commemorate. We are thankful for this 20th century prophet of freedom, who joined the prophets of history in the cry,
"In the name of freedom, let my people go."
Martin Luther King Jr. envisioned the ultimate freedom. The freedom achieved by struggle. The freedom reached in brotherhood. The freedom fired by a man. The freedom inspired by the lot of people. The freedom free of hates. The freedom full of love.
In the name of this freedom of love, let my people go.
He came into our lives when the yearning of people to be free had turned their attention to justice. For justice and only justice we shall follow, that we may live and inherit the land which the Lord our God gives us.
In the name of justice, let my people go.
He reminded us that the spirit of man soars from the depths of despair. With the strength and belief in the promise of the Creator of the universe, we know and we testify the Lord loves justice. He will not forsake his saints.
In the name of the Lord, let my people go.
And so he set off with us on a journey for justice. It was a journey proclaiming the words of the ancient prophet Amos. Let justice roll down like waters, and the righteousness of a mighty stream. It was a journey calling forth modern ministries of Christians and Jews to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, and to set at liberty those who are oppressed.
In the name of the prophet Amos, and in the name of suffering people, let my people go.
The journey went to Montgomery to affirm human dignity and courage, to Birmingham to defeat the sickness of separating human life, to Selma to ensure the equality of people in human affairs, to 100 nameless communities to remove the painful shackles of oppression and light joyous torches of liberty.
In the name of this journey toward freedom, let my people go.
When war was encountered, the leader of this journey sang with the people, "Ain't gonna study this war no more." And when violence was met, he spurned and said, "Hate is too great a burden to bear."
In the name of peace and love, let my people go.
And even when death was confronted, as the journey reached Memphis, he could say in a final triumph that in life he had found something worth dying for, something worth life itself. The Promised Land, a land of freedom and justice.
In the name of the Promised Land, let my people go.
So we are thankful that the Spirit of the Lord anointed a man who preached good news to the poor, who rejected segregation and embraced liberation, who prophesied the greatness of his people in the struggle for the deliverance of all.
In the name of the Spirit of the Lord, let my people go.
We praise the Lord God for sending us a man of peace who resisted tyranny, a man of nonviolence who fought for liberty, a man of God who worked for the people. Thank you, Lord, for Martin Luther King Jr., who inspired us with his dream, who walked into our lives and our hearts with his marches for justice, who demanded the freedom with a great courage in the face of grave danger, and who has now passed on to your promised land. Thank you for his noble legacy to continue the journey to that land here on earth in life for all people. Thank you, God. You have sent us one who now causes us to say,
In the name of Martin Luther King Jr., let my people go.
Now we'll have greetings from the Governor of Kentucky, the Honorable Andy Beshear, and from our Mayor, the Honorable Linda Gordon.
Good morning, everyone. It is an honor to be with you for the 28th Annual Unity Breakfast. This year, the word unity carries a new significance. We as Kentuckians have faced unimaginable hardships. Just last month, Western Kentucky was devastated by historic tornadoes. We're still continuing to fight COVID-19, and we still see the pain from racial injustice that has plagued our nation for far too long. And while sometimes it's hard to understand why, we always see God in the response. During these challenges, Kentuckians stand united. United with our people, united to help as many as possible, united to grieve, and united to lift one another up. And because of that unity, we can look ahead as we enter a more hopeful historic moment, one filled with great opportunity and even the promise of prosperity for all of our people. In 2021, we shattered every economic development record in the history of Kentucky, with a record number of full-time jobs created for Kentuckians and a record amount of investment. And what that truly means is more people can put food on their tables and build the lives that they want and deserve. We've made historic investments in our infrastructure, meaning your kids and mine can travel on the safest roads and bridges. We've worked to ensure every Kentuckian has access to clean water and high-speed internet. And we've worked to invest in our education system and establish pathways to ensure our kids are set for success. And we're not done yet. Our goal is to ensure these 2 years of progress turn into 20 years of prosperity. But to do that, it's going to take all of us working together, putting our differences aside, and coming together with purpose. As Dr. King said, the time is always right to do what is right, and that time is now. As your governor, I will always be ready to listen and learn so that together we can see through our common goal of creating a better place for our families. We will get through this. We'll get through this together. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mayor Linda Gorton. I first want to thank Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Alpha Beta Lambda Chapter, for inviting me today and for hosting this virtual event. This is the 28th Annual Unity Breakfast. That is quite a milestone for our city. Congratulations to the Alpha Beta Lambda Chapter Education Foundation. I am honored and humbled to join this virtual celebration of the remarkable life and teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We all know that we still need Dr. King's teachings. We still have a lot to learn and many changes to make. Over the past year, we have continued to implement the recommendations of my commission on racial justice and equality. I remain convinced that we can continue to make the changes needed to make Lexington a place where everyone feels welcome and safe, and where everyone has the opportunity to get a good education and a good job. I will continue to do my part to promote equity, diversity, and inclusion throughout our community. And I ask that you join me as we stand together for what is right. Dr. King's message calls us to get up and join in the fight for equality. Let's dedicate ourselves each day to keep on marching toward Dr. King's dream. Thank you all so very much.
To Governor Beshear and Mayor Gordon, thank you for those timely remarks. Your presence here today, although virtual, is certainly very much appreciated. We now come to that part of the program where we will recognize an organization which has advanced the legacy of the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. To make the special organizational recognition presentation, I invite Mr. Randall Vaughn, Vice Chairman of the Alpha Beta Lambda Foundation, to do the honors.
Each year, Alpha Beta Lambda Chapter Education Foundation of Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated recognizes individuals and organizations that have carried out the legacy of Dr. King. Recipients of this award have gone beyond the call of duty, have made a difference, and have worked toward unifying our community. Incorporated in 1881, this organization has served the Lexington community and Central Kentucky for decades. This organization seeks to promote economic development, job creation, and overall business growth in Lexington and its neighboring communities, while strengthening its existing businesses through the many programs and services that the organization offers. Through its Minority Business Program, which was started in the mid-1990s, this organization has worked to address community deficiencies for disadvantaged businesses by bringing people of different ethnicities and faith together, providing more financing, educational, and procurement opportunities for minority-owned businesses, accelerating the growth of MBEs in the regional marketplace, and advocating for stronger diversity and inclusion in the workplace as a participant in a Black Faith Leaders Collaborative. During the pandemic, this organization managed the city's Economic Stimulus Recovery Program, awarding $6.9 million in grants and loans to small, minority, and women-owned businesses. Our 2022 Unity Award recipient is Commerce Lexington. To read the full bio on this organization and other accomplishments to promote unity, please visit www.alphabetalambda.com. Accepting the award is Bob Quick, Commerce Lexington President and CEO, John Goldman, Regional President of PNC Bank, 2022 Commerce Lexington Board Chair, and Ray Daniels, President of Equity Solutions Group, 2021 Commerce Lexington Board Chair.
What does unity mean to Commerce Lexington? Unity means that you have embraced the differences of others, different cultures, perspectives, and ideas for who and what they are in order to advance a common cause. It requires understanding, a lot of listening, and making sure that you have many different voices at the table. Ultimately, achieving unity builds trust and leads to better social and economic outcomes throughout our community.
What does it mean for Commerce Lexington to receive this award? On behalf of our board of directors and our more than 1,800 business members, we are humbled and honored to receive this award. Dr. Martin Luther King often said that human progress comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals who realize that the time is always right to do what is right. This award recognizes the efforts of many people, not only within Commerce Lexington, but across our community, who are working to lift up disadvantaged individuals and businesses.
We certainly want to acknowledge Tyrone Tyler, who could not be here today. He has done a great job leading our Minority Business Development Program, along with MBD Vice Chair Larry Forrester, and many great volunteers. Commerce Lexington has long held that creating a welcoming city for all is not only good for our economy, but is also key to our business recruitment and retention efforts. There's still much work to be done, but through constant collaboration, we will be able to create a Lexington that works for everyone.
Each year we have the distinct honor and privilege of recognizing our middle school students in the Lexington-Fayette County area through our Martin Luther King Jr. Unity Breakfast Essay Contest. The essay contest was put in place several years ago to recognize the literary genius of our students, and this year is no different. We have 3 winners, all from Morton Middle School, that are serving in the first, second, and third place categories this year. Our third place winner is Amelia Sheehan, an 8th grader from Morton Middle School, receiving a $100 prize. Our second place winner is Max Melton, a 7th grader from Morton, receiving a $300 prize. And our first place winner for the essay contest for 2022 is Geneva Lakin, an 8th grader at Morton Middle School, receiving a $500 prize. In celebration of Dr. King, as well as in further recognition of our middle school students, we always have the first place winner to present the award-winning essay. So this morning, I present to you Geneva Lakin. Enjoy.
We cannot be separated in interest or divided in purpose. We stand together until the end. That was a quote by Woodrow T. Wilson. It means that we cannot let our own personal interests keep us from being connected. Instead, we have to unite for the better of everyone. This is similar to the ideals that Martin Luther King Jr. had for peace and unity. Martin Luther King Jr. once stated that even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream that everyone would be equal and that everyone could be united. He had this dream because he knew that many generations would face many different problems that we would need to be unified to overpower. King gave the world a little push. Now all we have to do is finish the difficult, though much needed, task of connecting. Unity is important, unity is essential, unity is a need in order to thrive. In our world today, most people are more interested in helping get themselves ahead instead of helping others to catch up. When this lifetime is throwing so many challenges at us, we have to stop focusing on ourselves only, but also focus on the people and communities around us. Without unity, we cannot defeat these obstacles such as global warming, pandemics, and much more. Take a look at how we are getting through this pandemic. So many people came together to find a solution and came out with results that could work and are working, yet still we are divided. We must come together, we must strengthen, we must unite if we are to overcome everything. When we are met with differences from ourselves and what we know, it's common to separate and break apart. We have to be stronger than that though. Without many differences, there's no moving forward. Differences should help us come together, not do the opposite. We have to celebrate everyone's uniqueness. Once we learn to appreciate that, we can begin to connect with one another. I hope you go back to your lives not as the same as you were before, but with an effort to come together with everyone around you. Together we stand.
Congratulations to the award winners and a special kudos to the essay winner. Continuing with our recognitions, I would like to highlight under the banner of Alpha Salutes two outstanding leaders in the field of education. They are Mr. Gentry LaRue Sr. and Mr. Emmanuel Manny Calk. Both individuals are being recognized posthumously for their work with students in the Fayette County school system. Alpha salutes Mr. Gentry Cornelius LaRue Sr. Education, teaching, and service were among LaRue's passions. He graduated from Kentucky State College majoring in biology and later received his master's degree from Western Kentucky University. While at KSU, he affiliated with the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, where he remained a distinguished and active member. Following his time in the U.S. Army, LaRue began his teaching career in Jessamine County. His career in Fayette County began as a biology teacher in the original Dunbar High School. That's also where he served as assistant principal. Additionally, he served as principal at Ashland Elementary School. LaRue continuing his career with Fayette County as director of adult education until his retirement. While living in Lexington, LaRue served faithfully as a member of First Baptist Church, East 2nd Street Christian Church, and most recently, Imani Baptist Church. Gentry was the loving husband of Janice Napier LaRue, proud father of Dr. Gentry LaRue Jr. and Mr. Gregory LaRue, grandfather of 4 and great-grandfather of 1. Next, Alpha salutes Mr. Emmanuel Calk, or Manny as he loved to be called. He was a gifted educator and servant leader who lived by the mantras he called Calkisms. Brilliant and insightful, Manny saw educational patterns before others did. He always kept an eye on the horizon and identified actions needed to prepare students for a future no one else expected. The first in his family to attend college, Manny earned his bachelor's and master's degrees from the University of Delaware and a Juris Doctorate from Widener University School of Law. Manny's 24-year career included teaching in a detention center, founding a charter middle school, prosecuting juvenile cases in the courtroom. Manny led an all-white rural elementary school, several middle schools, and 2 high schools to state prominence. Adding to these achievements is the management of Kentucky's second largest school district, Fayette County. Manny was a member of First Baptist Church in Bracktown, star in the East Lodge No. 1, Philadelphia, Delaware, Sigma Pi Phi fraternity, and Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. Manny received many national, state, and local awards for his work in education, but his greatest accomplishment was marrying Crystal, his rock and the love of his life. Today, we salute these 2 gentlemen for their years of educational service, and we thank them in a manner that they both would appreciate by encouraging all young people to stay in school and gain the knowledge needed to successfully navigate life and become a better citizen of the world. If you would like to read the complete bios of our Alpha Salutes gentlemen, just go to the website alphabetalambda.com. It is now my pleasure to introduce our presenters for this year's Unity program. The presenters will come in the following order. As an educator, Dr. Demetrius Liggins, Superintendent, Fayette County Public Schools. As a spiritual leader, Reverend Dr. Mark Johnson, Senior Pastor, Central Baptist Church here in Lexington. As a civil rights advocate, we will hear from Dr. Catrice Albert, Vice President of Institutional Diversity at the University of Kentucky. Our final speaker will address Dr. King as a humanitarian. And we're delighted to have Ms. Susan Elkington, President, Toyota Motor Manufacturing in Kentucky. We will hear from our first 2 speakers. After that, we will have a musical interlude featuring Mr. Keith Dean, an opera singer. He'll be accompanied by Mr. Charles Little, a retired Fayette County music teacher. Following the musical rendition, we'll return to hear our final presenters.
Good morning. It is an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to serve as this year's speaker to reflect on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and education during this 28th annual Unity Breakfast. As many of you know, I moved to Lexington a little more than 5 months ago, so this is the first time I'm celebrating Dr. King's birthday in the Bluegrass. Over the past several months, many people have told me that this annual MLK breakfast celebration, sponsored by the Alpha Beta Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Incorporated, is a seminal Lexington event, and I've looked forward to this occasion for some time. Although we are unable to gather in person due to the escalating cases of COVID-19 in the state and nation, I am thankful for all of those who have found a way to still mark this momentous occasion collectively as a community. This year's theme, Unity, a necessity for life's challenges, speaks to the challenge and opportunity to make the changes necessary to right the wrongs that have persisted in our nation for more than 400 years now. One of my favorite pieces of wisdom from Dr. King was his admonition that we must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. This quote appeared in the St. Louis Dispatch the day after Dr. King addressed an overflow crowd at Christ Church Cathedral. While working on my remarks for today, I was unable to find the entire text of the speech or any of the speeches that was given that day in St. Louis. The reason I bring this up is because the article also included many of the more controversial statements that Dr. King made that day. He demanded action on the Civil Rights Bill, and while affirming his commitment to nonviolent action, warned of the possibility of violence if the bill was not strong enough. He talked about the importance of economic equity and called for compensation for Black Americans who have received negative special treatment for 300 years. And he outlined plans for a purchasing boycott against businesses that did not provide equal opportunities. None of those remarks appear among the top quotes attributed to Dr. King this time of year, perhaps because they're not as pithy or inspirational. But I would suggest that part of it is also that the amnesia caused by the passage of time has made some forget that Dr. King was a revolutionary. In his Nobel Prize acceptance speech, Dr. King said, "I have the audacity to believe that peoples everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits. I believe that what self-centered men have torn down, other-centered men can build up." Dr. King called for a transformation of our society into a brotherhood and sisterhood where every single person was respected simply by the fact that they were human beings. He urged us to ask hard questions, challenge authority, reject the way it's always been done, and dismantle the status quo. He wanted us to overturn the tables. The end of January, I will mark my first 100 days as school superintendent in Fayette County Public Schools. These first few months have been exhilarating and inspiring as you have embraced me as part of the community and trusted me with your insights about dreams for Fayette County Public Schools. Since July, I've met with thousands of people, visited nearly every school campus, reviewed stacks of data, and read hundreds of pages of external reviews for our district. Although there are great things happening in our district, I'm not completely satisfied, and I'm thrilled to report that I'm not alone. One of the things that continues to impress me about Lexington is that our community is willing to honestly confront the long-standing disparities that so many others refuse to acknowledge. I've been an educator for over 2 decades, and I've worked in more than half a dozen different school systems. But I've never before lived in a place where so many people are willing to have the frank conversations necessary for substantive change. Doing what's best for every child requires dismantling the systems that were designed to hold them back. We have to ensure that our schools are safe, welcoming, and nurturing places where every student is given opportunities, experience, and necessary supports to discover their gifts and chart their path forward. Each student has unique strengths, and we need to create learning environments that allow them to explore their individual talents. As Dr. King observed, we must discover what we are called to do, and once we discover it, should set out and do it with all of the strength and all of the power that we have in our systems. Education is not just a civil right. Education is a fundamental human right. Our call is to work for equality for anyone who is oppressed or marginalized. We have an obligation to provide a world-class education for every child in our community, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, family income, special need, native language, or zip code. Our community has the resources, talents, and capacity to serve children identified as academically gifted and children with special needs with the same passion and commitment. We do not have to choose between helping children in poverty or serving children whose families have means. We can and we must serve each child at the highest possible levels. Dr. King is quoted in his writing, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education." Based on the enthusiasm and engagement I have witnessed in Fayette County so far, I have abiding faith and audacious confidence that Fayette County Public Schools can be the first district in our nation to prove that equity and excellence are not only possible, but achievable. Together we will create an educational system that I believe Dr. King would be proud of and a step towards realizing the America he dreamt of and the one we all deserve. Happy MLK Day, everyone.
As the world continues to cope with a world-unsettling pandemic burdened by enormous problems of division, distrust, and deception, where can we go to find some hope? I'm Mark Johnson, Senior Pastor of Central Baptist Church in Lexington, Kentucky, and I'm honored by the invitation from the Alpha Beta Lambda Education Chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity to point us to the spiritual legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who asked this burning question as the title of his last book, a question as relevant now as it was then. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? As we continue to learn from Dr. King, who is a guide and an example to help us face and address our most pressing issues. Dr. King was an ordained preacher. His father was a pastor. His grandfather and great-grandfather were pastors. His father's brother was a pastor. His doctorate from Boston University was in systematic theology, and he held a Bachelor of Divinity degree from Crozer Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania. And from this foundation of faith, a great skyscraper of spirituality shined forth, a beacon of light in the darkness, a message of hope for the hopeless, a testimony of determination for the despairing, a message that said it is never the wrong time to do the right thing. Dr. King's call echoed from the pages of the Bible to engage in this struggle for human dignity, meaning, and equality against the forces of division and darkness until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. The formation of his spiritual experience was developed in the dynamic and vibrant faith of the Black church, a faith Professor Diane Chandler describes as being forged in the fiery furnace, a faith she describes as learning how to persevere through pain and suffering by turning to God for strength and nurturing a living and passionate commitment that affirms God's intention of freedom and justice for every individual. This inner strength to stand up when others were tempted to sit down, to organize and coordinate when others were tempted to give up, to keep showing up even when you were criticized, abused, and arrested, to rise up in solidarity with the poor, the oppressed, and the marginalized when others wanted to ignore them and look the other way, grew out of Dr. King's vibrant Christian experience, following the one who said that true love was a giving love that looked first to another's needs before it tried to protect and defend the self. In his 1963 work, Strength to Love, King wrote that the idea of God for him had moved from being a metaphysical category to becoming a living reality, saying, and I quote, In the midst of outer dangers, I have felt an inner calm. I have felt the power of God transforming the fatigue of despair into the buoyancy of hope. Whether it was while sitting in a jail cell in Birmingham, Alabama in 1967, or at his kitchen table in Montgomery many years earlier, a 27-year-old husband and young father pulled from bed in the middle of the night by a cowardly caller who threatened his life and the life of his children, or walking through the rubble of his home 3 days later after a bomb had exploded that took his house, but fortunately missed the kids and the family, or in his last sermon preached on March 31st, 1968, when he told us that he had been to the mountaintop 4 days before an assassin's bullet would take him away from his earthly labors. Dr. King learned to rely upon that compelling inner voice that said, stand up, stand up, stand up for righteousness, and God will be by your side. This is a faith that is more than just a feeling. It is a courageous and loving action and dynamic spirituality. More than sweet sentimentality or the emptiness of thoughts and prayers that are devoid of any meaningful follow-through, a faith that resists an escapism away from the harsh realities and troubles of real life, or one getting stuck in suspended paralysis and inaction, waiting for God to make it all okay. No, a dynamic faith is one that weds together personal spirituality and political spirituality, private devotion and public duty, a holy call from heaven above that is transformed into a call to do the work that must be done. One of the great dangers of our times is not only this large collection of trouble we have accumulated and tolerated, but the short-sightedness that fails to understand we cannot solve any of our problems without the strength and stability that comes from the source of our being, a God who cares, calls, and empowers us into service. Dr. King often told the story of Mother Pollard. In the autumn of 1956, just 1 year after the lynching of 14-year-old Emmett Till in Money, Mississippi, the bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama had entered into its 10th month of protest. King admonished one of the walkers, the elderly Mother Pollard, to go back to riding the bus because she was too old to keep walking. But she objected, saying, I'm going to walk just as long as everybody else walks. I'm going to walk until it's over. King continued to challenge her, asking, but aren't your feet tired? Yes, she replied, my feet is tired, but my soul is rested. Today we have too many with tired feet that labor to carry weary hearts and exhausted souls as we seek to confront and eliminate the persistent racism that is still with us today. I encourage you to lean upon and learn from the example of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose vision and faith in a transcendent and powerful God of goodness, love, and justice helped pull him through and propel him onward. We all need each other, and we will all need a little help from above, too.
Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, a little while longer. Everything will
Good morning, Commonwealth family. I am Dr. Catrice Albert, Vice President of Institutional Diversity at the University of Kentucky. And on behalf of President Eli Capilouto and our wildly incredible students, faculty, staff, administration, and alumni, I offer heartfelt greetings to you at this, our 28th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Unity Breakfast. As Dr. King prepared to speak to more than 250,000 people at the March on Washington for Freedom and Jobs in 1963, Gospel great Mahalia Jackson encouraged him. Tell them about the dream, Martin. Tell them about the dream. That encouragement from a friend, from a fellow champion, launched what would become his most prolific public speech. However, despite his natural ability to inspire and galvanize, Dr. King did not mean to become one of the most influential civil rights leaders. He was, like so many of us, just a man tired and frustrated, who was so disappointed by the country he loved so much that he could just not sit and wait as the hands of power held us back. Of course, this dream and his work did not end at desegregation. Among many things, Dr. King exposed and challenged the insurmountable underlying causes of poverty. He fought for equal access to education, and he championed fair job opportunities and equal pay. He was met with opposition as he struggled against the values of a country built by our people, but not for our people. Today, as we continue to resist prejudice in all its forms, Dr. King's iconic speech still inspire and lionize our work. His moral and political philosophy reminds us that although we have made progress, we must continue to seek out and amplify a quest for equity, especially for those most powerless. And his legacy reminds us of the collective consciousness we all hold together. Our collective strength and our collective influence, or our collective ability to change. We must continue to be united. We need contemporary Martins, like our youth poet laureate, Amanda Gorman, who inspires us. We need the Malcolms, like author Brian Stevenson, who challenges us, and the Mahalias, like you, who remind us that we have a collective voice. As the African proverb encourages, if we want to go fast, go alone. If we want to go far, go together. Good morning.
In Strength to Love, published in 1963, Dr. King poses a simple choice to the audience, arguing that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are we doing for others? Perhaps no one in history has more completely answered that question than the man who originally asked it. His legacy and humanitarianism are known the world over. His passion and legacy are the drumbeat by which progress continues to march. There are many opinions about what drove Dr. King, but I believe core to Dr. King's impact was his faith. He understood more than most that regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, or class, that we are all made in the image of our Creator. This perspective radically altered how he viewed people, underscoring the dignity and worth of every person. He chose to walk a path that is different from most, born out of the courage of his convictions and fortified by his faith. He looked at the world around him and resolved to do whatever was necessary to make the U.S. and the world a more just place, even at great personal cost. Dr. King dedicated his entire life to ending segregation and racial and economic inequality. He brought about dramatic social reform in the United States and around the world through his words and courageous actions. His message of hope, nonviolence, civil disobedience was above all a message of love and unity. To him, unconditional love was a moral responsibility. To not oppose and speak out against the injustices of the world would have been a sin not only against his fellow man, but against God as well. What distinguishes humanitarian from others? Perhaps it means surrendering things such as comfort and luxury and ego and stepping forward to help without self-regard and paying no mind to self-preservation. Not only did Dr. King undertake his work knowing the hefty price it could cost him, but he felt deeply the needs, pains, and vulnerability of others. He was passionate about unifying people and inspiring them to walk alongside each other in the fight for justice and equality. Dr. King led the civil rights movement knowing it would be met with unspeakable levels of violence and hate. Nothing he undertook was easy, but his convictions was firmly rooted in his belief that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. Dr. King was a Baptist minister, but he was also a teacher, and his subjects were racial equality, justice, and unity. He taught anyone willing to listen that the best way to make change was to be change, that we, as humans, were more similar than different. He captivated his audience by painting a picture of how life should be, propelling them to act in spite of the forces that would rise up against. Dr. King faced a kind of opposition that many of us will never have to face, but he never lost his joy or took his eyes off the prize. He fought for civil rights and basic human rights for millions of people, all because he believed life was a sacred gift and that each of us poses a unique dignity gifted by the one who created us. And by doing so, he changed the world. Today, his humanitarianism still serves as a compass, and the lessons he taught still line the path that we too should follow. Unity and necessity for life's challenges. This year's theme is a fitting reminder that while we live in a world changed by Dr. King's life, there is still work to be done. The past 2 years, possibly more than most recent memory, have exposed the deep disparities and hardships disproportionately carried by many throughout our communities. It'd be simple to look inward and ignore the hurt around us. It would be easy to occupy ourselves with things that were easy and comfortable, shielding our eyes from the sad realities of the world and the hurt experienced by many of our neighbors. But this is not the legacy Dr. King left for us. Today, as we do each year, we remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We remember his wisdom. We remember his words and his compassion. We reflect on his life, his impact, and we reaffirm that there is still much work to be done. We also echo what Dr. King taught us, and together, unified, we reaffirm that while the moral arc of this universe is long, it does indeed bend towards justice.
If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl, but by all means, keep moving.
Now, allow me to introduce the outstanding chair of this year's Unity program, Mr. Lee Jackson, who will provide us with some closing remarks.
On behalf of the Board of Directors of Alpha Beta Lambda Chapter Education Foundation, I want to thank our sponsors, for without them, this program would not be possible. I thank our speakers and other program participants. I thank WLEX TV, Scripps Media Incorporated for partnering with us to make this broadcast possible. Again, thanks to our sponsors whose names you can see scrolling on the screen at the end of this program. Again, thank you for tuning in.
In closing, I would like to thank the members of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity for inviting me for a second time to be your MC for this very special community event. Now we will have our closing song with a special recognition of our sponsors. Thank you again for being with us today, and I challenge our viewers to get and stay involved with developing a more unified Lexington community.